back home.
After 8 years of inflationary spending, after 8 straight years of deficit, after doubling the national debt, after creating record-setting interest hikes, and after implementing a punishing carbon tax, a record number of Canadians can't afford food. So why won't this Prime Minister call his appointees in the Senate and have them pass C-234 and take the tax off food production? What do farmers have to do to get a little respect around here? Yeah. Elect a few more Liberals?
Yeah. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, we all know that the economy and trade go hand in hand. In fact, 1 in 5 jobs in Canada depend on trade. So let's talk about that. The Ukrainian-Canadian Congress has once again expressed their disappointment with the Leader of the Opposition and the Conservatives for voting against Ukraine and free trade. They have written directly to the Conservative leader calling on their party to change their position and vote for the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement. Will Conservative members have the courage to defy their leader, vote for trade, vote for this agreement, and stand with Ukraine?
The Honourable Member for Yellowhead.
Madam Speaker, Conservative Bill C-234 to axe the carbon tax for farmers remains stalled in the Senate. Senators appointed by this Prime Minister continue to make life unaffordable by delaying this bill. Dave and Devon run a dairy operation in my community. They pay thousands more on the carbon tax just to heat their barns. Now the Prime Minister wants to quadruple the tax on them. Madam Speaker, will this Prime Minister take his carbon tax off them to make food affordable for Canadians?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, that member from Alberta represents thousands of Ukrainian Canadians, as I am proud to do. Let me just read to him a little bit about one of my constituents, Alexandra Hichi, and what she wrote to the Conservative leader. She happens to be the president of the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress. What she underscores is the fact that when we're concerned about the price of food in this country, we need to be concerned about geopolitical crises that are causing food prices to escalate. Right. And she underscored that she was disappointed to see the official opposition vote against the adoption of the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement, that Ukraine needs assistance, that Ukraine's government, led by Volodymyr Zelensky, is asking for that assistance. Right. What I'm asking him to do is...
Honourable Member for Saskatoon-Grasswoods.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. After 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, Canadians are struggling to afford the basics. In fact, Canadians are heading to the food bank in record numbers. This Prime Minister is simply not worth the cost. You know, Kelly in my riding spends $6,300 a year in carbon tax on his farm. Now the Prime Minister wants to quadruple that. Will the Prime Minister simply axe this tax off Kelly's operation to make it more affordable for Canadians to feed their families?
Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, the fundamental principle is that the Leader of the Opposition and his colleagues are not worth the cost. What is the cost? The cost has been underscored by the President of the Ukrainian Congress herself, a woman who happens to be my constituent. What she said is that Ukraine needs assistance. The Ukrainian government is begging for that assistance. What we have seen is a failure of leadership on the part of the official opposition to make supporting Ukraine a non-partisan issue. It should never be partisan to confront an authoritarian ruler in an illegal war who's driving up the price of food in this country and around the world.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Member for Portage-Liscard.
After 8 long years, it's clear that this Prime Minister simply isn't worth the cost. Jack, a grain farmer from southern Manitoba, paid over $6,000 in carbon taxes to dry his grain in October alone. And no, the government rebate isn't making him better off.
That's right.
But I assume Jack's money is now paying for the Environment Minister's high-carbon, high-hypocrisy 2-week trip to Dubai. And now the Liberals want to quadruple that carbon tax on farmers like Jack. So will the Prime Minister tell his Liberal senators to pass Bill C-234 to help make food more affordable for Canadians?
Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, it's interesting the member opposite speaks about a high-cost trip. Let's speak about the Conservatives travelling to the UK to sip on champagne and oysters. And at that trip, one of their members were actually paid for by the Danube Institute, who has regularly advocated against Ukraine in support of Russia. Lo and behold, Conservatives come back and vote against the Canada-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement. Madam Speaker, when it comes to the Champagne Conservatives, they're not worth the cost to Canadians or Ukrainians.